Story 1. New neighbor didn't like my old fence, so I took it down. About 5 or 6 years ago, I built a fence in my backyard. I talked to my neighbors and we decided on a good place to build the fence. We knew an approximate property line, based on some survey pins, but were both too cheap to pay for a surveyor. We shook hands and I built the fence. It was a great deal for my neighbors. I paid for everything, built the fence, and all they had to do was give me a thumbs up when it was done. Then, a year later, they sold their house. That meant I got a new neighbor, more specifically, I got Anne. Anne was from the big city. Anne was a realtor. Anne had flipped 8 houses in 12 years. Anne loved this new house and planned on staying for a long time, and Anne had a dog. Razzie was a German Shepherd mix that spent most of the day outside and while Anne went to work. Razzie was aggressive towards children, animals, insects, and any plants that waved in the breeze. Razzie also, as Anne once told me, loved to chew on furniture. That's why Razzie stayed outside so much. About 6 months after Anne moved in, I saw a surveyor walking around in my neighborhood, and he was paying special attention to my backyard. The next day, Anne showed up at my front door with a stack of papers and asked me if I was going to pay her for the 9 inches that my fence was encroaching onto her property. I explained the handshake deal with the last neighbors, but she was having no part of it. She wanted the fence moved or she wanted money, no discussions. She had spoken to her lawyer friend and was perfectly happy to take me to court over the fence. She told me, "I don't know how you guys do it out here in the sticks, but where I come from, we follow the rules." So I got rid of the fence. The next day I unscrewed the horizontal rails from the brackets, stacked the fence panels up against my garage, and pulled up the fence posts with my work van. About a week later, Anne shows up at my front door again. She wants to know when I'm going to be building a new fence. Turns out, without my portion of the fences, she has not been able to let Razzie out unattended for fear that he will run away, attack something, or get hit by a car. She also told me she can't keep him in the house all day while she's at work anymore. Her furniture and carpet are all but ruined. I told her, "Well, Anne, I'm not going to be rebuilding the fence. I don't want any legal trouble, and the best way to stay out of trouble is to not build near your property." The look on her face was priceless. I thought she was going to cry. She probably did when she got back home. She tried to protest, saying that she really needed the fence back, and she would even help pay for the new one. She told me how much she loved the style and aesthetic of the old one. It was just the location that she had a problem with. I stood firm. There would be no new fence. She never got a fence. She made half-hearted attempts to put up some bamboo fencing, but Razzie tore through that stuff like wet newspaper. Eventually, I sold my place and moved away. I took the old fence panels with me, and I still look at them every day when I let my dog out in the morning. Story 2. I used my meal plan to feed over 120 less fortunate people. This happened my freshman year of college about 20 years ago. My university had just invested in a big new dining hall, and to help pay for their investment, required all new students to buy a 150 meal plan both semesters. This was a big financial burden, being from a lower middle-class family, but my parents pooled funds to help me out and make it happen. Shortly into my first semester, I found out from friends that the meals you didn't use didn't roll over. Since I lived off campus, I knew I wouldn't be able to use them all. Heading into November, I realized I would end up with 60 to 75 meals left over, and I complained about this a lot to family and friends because it seemed like such a waste. In comes the plan. My freshman year of college was also my cousin's senior year, and we hung out pretty often. He was the biggest trickster, prankster type you ever met. One night while we were drinking, he said, "What if you brought a bunch of homeless people to use up your meals? How much would that piss off those self-righteous bastards?" We laughed all night. But the more I thought about the idea, the more I really started to like it. We talked all weekend about it and hatched a plan. On Monday morning, we went down to the local Salvation Army around the corner. I have grown to really despise this organization, but in the early 2000s, in a small town, USA, it's what we had. We told the lady at the desk I would like to feed people in need with my meal plan. She was hesitant at first, but said she was working with people that this would be a huge blessing too, especially during the holiday season. She helped me organize 2 days the following week where around 30 people would meet me to eat at the dining hall. I would wear a certain hat so they could find me, and we would go eat. The day finally arrived and all kinds of people were there. There were homeless people in tattered clothes. There were families with kids that seemed excited to eat out. There was even one family I will always remember that seemed embarrassed to take a handout, but I made an effort to talk to everybody and make them feel welcome. At noon, we headed into the dining hall. I walked up to the lady at the entrance and said, "These people are with me. They are my friends. I would like to swipe them in." She looked confused but reluctantly said okay. To say we got every reaction humanly possible would be an understatement. There were staff that were obviously annoyed with the influx of diners. There were students that were laughing. There were students that were giving me the silent clap. There were snobbish faculty members that seemed to be disgusted at the type of people coming into the dining hall. I didn't care at all. Eventually, a head staff member came up and said they knew what I was doing and they didn't like it. I said, "These are my friends eating with me. I paid for these meals. Am I doing anything wrong?" She was stumped. The next day, the same situation happened with the same reactions. It seemed that I had caused quite a stir on campus, and it just so happened that the university president was eating there that day. She came up to me and said even though she would ask that I not tell my friends to do the same thing with their meals as the staff couldn't handle the influx of diners. She was proud that her students had the heart to do something for others like that. The following semester, I did the exact same thing. I even used my meals sparingly so I could bring more people. The one memory that will always stick out in my head is the family with the little kids so excited to go to the pizza bar and soft serve ice cream machine, giggling the whole time. To this day, it's still one of the proudest moments of my life. Me and my friends and family still have a drink and chuckle over the story and the angry reactions I got. Story 3, mom splits hairs with nanny to save a few dollars and ends up back paying hundreds. Karen and Ken are wealthy and extremely stingy. Their kid is Bob. Henry is an extremely sweet, generous single dad who lost his husband a few years ago and dotes on his kid Steve. I have been a nanny for several years now, and for the most part, I've worked with lovely, reasonable families. I have contracts for every family that guarantees the hours that I work, meaning if a family goes on vacation, I still get paid because I'm technically available to work, but they chose not to use my services. Think of gym membership where you pay regardless of whether you've been to the gym in a month. This is standard on nanny contracts. Another bit on my contract is called the nanny share. So if two of the families want to combine for the day, each of them pays 2/3 of my regular pay rate. I get paid a little more for watching more kids, and they save a little only paying a portion of what they would have paid. Karen and Ken's family went to Hawaii 3 weeks ago, and per my contract, I was to be paid as usual. Before they left, they asked if I could come in and watch Bob the Sunday after they returned so that they could recover and rest. I agreed, and my hours were set at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that Sunday. They went on the trip, everything was wonderful, and they texted me when they landed saying they would see me at 8 a.m. The next day, when I was about to head out the door at 7:30 a.m., I received a text saying that Bob was just waking up, so I should just show up at 8:30 a.m. instead. After the day of nannying, Karen asked if I would stay past my regular hours during the upcoming week so that they could have 2 date nights. I agreed, and Karen said she would reimburse me for all the extra hours at the end of the week since it'd be easier just to make one payment. Totally fine with me. The week finished, and I ended up staying an extra 8 hours total for the 2 date nights. I asked Ken to pay me for 16 hours, but he said he had to talk to Karen first to double check hours and I would pay me shortly. When I got home, I received a text from Karen saying, "Hi, thank you so much for covering for us these past few weeks. Ken and I are feeling refreshed and the show was hilarious. Since we were in Hawaii, you were paid for an entire week while you weren't working. We don't think this is quite fair as it is a large sum of money, so we'd like to apply some of those hours to your babysitting today and yesterday. We will pay you for 8 hours instead." I was furious. I screenshotted the part of my contract that plainly stated that I would be paid for any hours that their family was on vacation, and I reminded her that it was in violation of the contract. She reluctantly agreed, and I texted that it would be a total of 16 hours. Karen instantly replied and went off, texting, "On Sunday, we asked you to come in at 8:30 a.m., not 8 a.m. We are already being generous and paying you for the holiday we took. We expect you to track your hours better next time. This is unacceptable. You need to be as accurate as possible with the hours that we are paying you. We will pay you for 15.5 hours. Readers, this was a difference of $12.50. Bob has been tagging along with Steve and me to music class and soccer twice a week outside of Karen's regular contracted hours since January. Karen has never offered to pay for those hours, but Henry was fine with paying his full rate for those hours because Steve was having trouble making friends at school and had become close to Bob. I chose not to say anything about the slight bump in pay because I loved watching them play together. Malicious compliance time. As Karen stated, I needed to be as accurate as possible. I calculated all the hours that Bob has joined us since January, and the total amount they owed was almost $2,000. In the group chat with Karen, Ken, and Henry, I said, Karen stated that it was of utmost importance that I track the hours as accurately as possible, so I took it upon myself to double-check everything, including the shared hours. Thank goodness I did. I didn't realize we had forgotten to track all the hours that Bob joined us for soccer and music. Henry, I'm so sorry. Karen actually owes you quite a bit of money, if my calculations are correct. Henry replied, Karen and Ken, I am so disappointed to hear that she hasn't been compensated properly this entire time. I don't need my hours to be refunded for those hours because I wanted Steve to continue his playdates, but you need to pay her portion immediately. I got a huge chunk of money I wasn't expecting, and I am now on the hunt for my next nanny family. I'll be putting my 2 weeks notice with Karen and Ken as soon as I do. Story 4, Church wants to sue me for a review. I'm from Germany. We are a very litigious society, so much so that businesses can sue individuals for writing bad reviews. In fact, per German law, it's up to the individual to provide evidence that what they wrote actually happened, or else the individual can be forced to take down the review and pay legal costs to the business. I'm a tradesman and did some renovation work for a church in a small town. The church did not pay me. I took 50% up front, and the church had cheated me out of the second half after I had completed the job. The church only had one other review. I wrote a review stating that I had been cheated by the church. I promptly got a legal letter from the church demanding to take it down unless I wanted to be brought to court. The church could easily argue that they paid me in cash and I would be out of luck according to German law. Okay. I complied with their demand. I took down the review and posted a new one, stating that I'm a tradesman and the church threatened to sue me for writing a simple review. I also attached the legal letter from the church as an image in the review. Fast forward a few months, I received an angry call from the clergyman. He said my review had caused several tradesmen to either ghost him or ask him for complete payment up front. He claimed that I had cost them thousands and that I would burn in hell for hindering God's work. I then asked him, what is your religion's founder's view on honesty and compassion? Cue a moment of radio silence, followed by him hanging up the phone. No legal letter yet, anyhow. I can now substantiate my review.